Fraser Minten's overtime game winner was an exclamation mark on a 2-0 start for a Boston Bruins team that just feels different from last year's last place squad.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, October 10th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and today we're breaking down a 4-3 overtime win over the Chicago Blackhawks. A game that showcased Boston's balance and resilience. And it's significant because this team just is starting to feel a bit different than last year's last place squad. Today, we're going to dig into Fraser Minten's overtime heroics and how the new third line defined the team's identity. The stats that show Marco Sturm's system is taking hold, and the significance of this 2-0 start heading into Saturday's game against the Buffalo Sabres. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team for various outlets for going on 20 years. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, you can join FanDuel and get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the FanDuel app and get started with that bonus bet offer. All right, last night, the Boston Bruins played their home opener, their second game in 2 nights after beating the Washington Capitals in the season opener. And they came out, defeated the Chicago Blackhawks and Connor Bedard by a score of 4-3 in overtime. And it was Fraser Minten who scored the overtime winner on a beautiful shot past Arvid Soderblom, symbolic of what this team is trying to accomplish this year. We've talked about the kids versus the vets. This line kind of has it all. Tanner Jeannot, Fraser Minten, Mikey Eyssimont. That line wasn't on for the overtime winner. It was Minten out there with Morgan Geekie, which is a sign of trust that Marco Sturm has in his young center. 21-year-old who was traded to Boston in March for Brandon Carlo and along with a first-round pick. Let's just pause and admire that trade. He spent months waiting for an opportunity, and in his first home game this season at TD Garden, he buried the winner in front of a packed crowd, a statement goal that says, I belong. And you can see why Marco Sturm loves this kid. He plays straight lines, doesn't cheat the game, strong on pucks. There's nothing fancy about Fraser Minten, but it's exactly what Boston has been missing. A predictable, solid core that produces offensively. Tanner Jeannot scored earlier in the game. Mikey Eyssimont is the other winger on that line, and Sturm called them killers for him. Cue Mr. Brightside. That line is not out there to dazzle necessarily. They grind, they forecheck, they're physical, they make opposing D-men miserable. When they're on the ice, it's just honest hockey. Heavy shifts that wear teams down. And Minten played so well in regulation that he was rewarded with that shift in overtime, streaked down the ice on a 2-on-1 with Morgan Geekie, didn't hesitate, and just buried a beautiful shot to end this game. Now, it wasn't a perfect game for the Bruins. They did have 3 separate 1-goal leads that they coughed up, but they stuck with it and they didn't allow Chicago to build on that momentum. Every time the Blackhawks scored to tie things up, the Bruins came back and got the next one, the next one, the next one, and eventually that last next one was the game winner. Actually, they were down 2-1 at one point before Jeannot scored to tie things up, and then Lindholm Elias scored his second goal of the season, his second on the power play, to give the Bruins a lead. They did allow the Blackhawks to tie things up less than 2 minutes later, which was a bad trend we saw last season. But thankfully, they were able to close it out in overtime. Tanner Jeannot's goal came exactly the way it was envisioned for him to contribute. Net front presence, second effort, dirty rebound, and Eyssimont earned his first point as a Bruin on that play as well. It's the kind of goal that energizes a bench because it was all effort. And that led to Elias Lindholm being calm, poised so far, contributing offensively and setting the tone defensively. His power play goal, again, second of the season, was textbook Bruins. Quick puck movement, bodies at the net, and finish from in tight. And Lindholm quietly has had a fantastic start to this season. He's got 3 points in 2 games, 2 power play goals, and that's exactly what the Bruins are looking from him. Defensive responsibility, a bounce-back season offensively, and the Bruins have 28.6% success rate on the power play through 2 games, which is good for 8th in the NHL. 100% on the penalty kill, although we're getting a bit of our head ourselves here with the stats. Joonas Korpisalo, another big storyline heading into the season was who would be the backup, he or Michael DiPietro. Made a strong first impression. He wasn't overworked, but he looked composed. And in overtime, he had an unreal stick save to keep the Bruins in it and to give Minten a chance to score that winner. The only cloud on this game was an injury to Hampus Lindholm. He left in the first period. The Bruins classified it as a lower body injury. He was not able to return. And a lot of us were, hoping that it was not related to last year's injury, that it wasn't a re-aggravation of that knee issue that kept him out from November onwards. Marco Sturm said afterwards that it is indeed minor and not related to that injury. And still no word on whether he'll be able to play on Saturday. Perhaps they take a cautious approach and put Jordan Harris in there. The Bruins blue line is not super deep. Can't absorb much. If they lose either Hampus or Charlie McAvoy, that would be devastating once again. So hopefully it is just a minor issue that Lindholm is dealing with and that he can come back in one of the next couple of games. So the big storylines from last night, Fraser Minten coming out party, showing some early chemistry with Tanner Jeannot, Mikey Eyssimont, all of whom contributed offensively. In the season opener against Washington, it was all the first line. Last night, we got contributions from the top line guys, second line guys, with Casey Mittelstadt scoring his first of the season thanks to a beautiful drive from Victor Arvidsson to create that chance. And then you had the third line chipping in as well, with Minten being rewarded with that overtime shift and the overtime game winner. The Bruins are playing the right way, getting early results. How sustainable is it? Let's look at some of the early trends and stats behind this start, as well as the significance of this 2-0 start here as the podcast continues. A fresh weekend of NFL action is upon us, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, just pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. People love using FanDuel because it gives them so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football or the MLB playoffs, NHL, even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. $5 bet. If it hits, you'll get $300 to use across the FanDuel app. Thank you again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've looked at some of the big storylines from last night's 4-3 overtime win over the Chicago Blackhawks. Fraser Minten scoring in overtime. That killer third line that Marco Sturm is deploying. And Joonas Korpisalo made some unbelievable saves to keep the Bruins in it. The Bruins are 2-0, and thankfully it looks as though Elias Lindholm, just a minor injury, not related to his old injury, and he's going to get tested today. We'll see how things are. Those were the big storylines last night. Now, when it comes to the stats that we need to look at, the Bruins scored on the power play once again, which is huge. We all remember how bad the power play was last season. The Bruins went 1 for 5 on the power play, so not exceptional, but they're at 28.6%. Couple power play goals from Elias Lindholm early on this season, and Steve Spott making an immediate impact on this team. Same on the other end. Penalty kill went 3 for 3. Blackhawks went 0 for 3 on the power play, and the Bruins are perfect so far on the penalty kill, which is huge. They also had 16 shot blocks compared to only 6 for the Blackhawks. Hits were 25-15. So the whole harder to play against thing is working out well for the Boston Bruins. They had the advantage last night in terms of shots on goal at 5-on-5, 28-22. They had 8 high danger chances compared to only 7 for the Blackhawks. They also had the expected goals advantage at even strength. In all situations, looked even better. The Bruins had the shot attempt advantage. Shot advantage, 33-24. Scoring chances were pretty even. In fact, Chicago had 30 compared to 29, which is interesting, seeing as they only had 24 actual shots. High danger chances, though, were 10-8 in favor of the Bruins, and it was about 4-2 expected goals. Chicago managing to get one more than expected. The Bruins bang on at 4. So really, this is a game the Bruins should have won, and tells us last night especially wasn't just about luck. They might have gotten some of that against Chicago, but they're playing structured, balanced, and their special teams are looking fantastic. If you step back and look at both games, there's a bit of a pattern emerging here. They're not blowing anybody away in raw shot totals, but they are controlling the middle of the ice, trying to limit high danger chances against. They're getting active in terms of blocking shots, and they're capitalizing on their own opportunities. And that's exactly what Marco Sturm wants. The penalty kill has been perfect. 7 chances, 7 killed. The pressuring pucks blocking lanes, winning clears, and you can see the buy-in from, again, Tanner Jeannot, Fraser Minten, who've been getting penalty kill reps already, roles that they haven't played before. On the other side, the power play looks rejuvenated. Lindholm and Pastrňák moving the puck with pace. Pavel Zacha making some great decisions with the puck. And it was Lindholm from Zacha and Pastrňák on this power play opportunity. The same three guys who were in on power play goal scored by Lindholm in the first game. So those leaders stepping up. They're moving the puck better, leading to quality looks. Lindholm getting right to the front of the net. And the Bruins, succeeding so far. Faceoffs have been another strength for this team. 54.1% of faceoffs have been won by the Bruins. That was an area they struggled last year. And Lindholm's been dominant. Middlestad's holding his own. Zacha can step in, giving the Bruins a head start on possession on more shifts than not really helps. And of course, there's the defensive shape. The Bruins have all five guys working in sync, and they're not going to be flashy offensively, but they're also hard to break down defensively. They're still giving up stretches of zone time, but they're protecting the middle of the net. Opponents are so far settling for perimeter shots, one and done rushes. It might not be the most fun hockey to watch, but it is efficient. And one thing that has changed under Sturm for sure is bench energy. He mentioned it post-game. Body language matters. He wants life on the bench, emotion, communication, encouragement. You can feel the difference. Guys are celebrating block shots, and the buy-in is contagious. If you compare it to last year's start, there's some maturity here. Marco Sturm's only coached 2 NHL games, but the Bruins haven't been chasing games. They're kind of managing them and taking advantage of their opportunities, and that's a massive, massive difference from last year. All of this looks pretty promising early on. Again, it's so early, only a couple games, but the Bruins have really impressed me in these couple of games. And they're doing it with a PDO of 971. If you've been a longtime listener, you'll know that we do dig into some of the deeper stats sometimes. PDO is shooting percentage plus save percentage at 5-on-5. And the belief is it should balance out at around an even 100. The Bruins only have a 6.82 shooting percentage at 5-on-5, a 90.24 save percentage. So it's 971 right now, their PDO. If they can get some more success scoring 5-on-5 to boost, those totals on the power play, things could get even better for the Boston Bruins. You could argue that puck luck, they could have a bit more of it at this point. But Swayman was fantastic in the season opener. Korpisalo held his own, especially in overtime. And the Bruins now 2-0 to start the season. And we'll discuss the significance of that and also preview Saturday's game against the Buffalo Sabres here as the podcast continues. All right. This isn't about just a hot start or highlight reel goal from Fraser Minten. This is about identity for the Boston Bruins and setting it early. 2 games in, it seems as though the Bruins finally have one again. They aren't trying to be last year's team. They've moved on from last year. You can feel it. The overachieving team in 2023. You look a couple of years ago, the Bruins had Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha as their top 2 centers. They had brought in James Van Riemsdyk, Kevin Shattenkirk to kind of help with that transition. And they, you could argue, overachieved that season by beating the Maple Leafs in the first round and also pushing the Florida Panthers to 6 games. Last year was disjointed from the beginning, collapse. Both of those feel like well in the rearview mirror. It's a clean slate here. And Marco Sturm's influence is front and center. He's simplified things. He's emphasizing habits over heroics, and the players are responding. And the word that keeps coming up is predictability. Every guy knows his role, and when you have that, confidence builds fast. And Fraser Minten's emergence plays right into one of the season's big storylines, which was kids versus veterans. They had all these signings in the bottom 6. Young kids had to grab their spots in training camp and force the decision of whether to keep them up or send them down. Fraser Minten very much earned his spot. He has the trust of Marco Sturm, and Sturm's obviously not afraid to use young players in key spots by giving Minten that shift in overtime. Sends a message. If you play the right way, you will be rewarded. And guys in the AHL should be taking notice. Elias Lindholm been one of the most important players for the Bruins so far this season. Stabilizing the middle of the ice, supporting David Pastrňák, setting a standard defensively, but also chipping in offensively, more than chipping in offensively. He's got 3 points so far through 2 games, including 2 power play goals. 8 shots through 2 games as well, which is great to see. He's getting the puck on net, and now that he's healthy, remember this time last year he was dealing with a back issue that really slowed him down early on, but you can kind of see now why Don Sweeney targeted him, and he seems to be a perfect fit for Sturm's vision for this team. The Bruins also wanted to get harder to play against. Tanner Jeannot coming in, not just throwing hits, but he's retrieving pucks, screening goalies, creating chaos. And if their third line can continue to generate some momentum, even some scoring chances, that's going to go a long, long way. He's only got 4 hits right now, 2 block shots. Elias Lindholm and Fraser Minten actually lead this team in hits at the moment, followed by David Pastrňák, Morgan Geekie, Mark Kastelik, Sean Corrali, Tanner Jeannot, each with 4. The fourth line has been a bit quiet so far. No points from Kastelik, Corrali, or Husnudinov. Victor Arvidsson not credited with a point either, but he was very instrumental on that goal by Casey Middlestat. Hopefully they can get some more contributions from that fourth line. Maybe it's worth giving John Beecher a look in there in one of the next 2 games. They do have 2 games coming up, Saturday and Monday, so that's 4 games within, 6 days for the Bruins. They could use some guys coming in. Goaltending-wise, though, the Bruins are in a great place. Swayman was brilliant in Washington. Korpisalo backed it up with a composed debut. Doesn't seem to be much sense of panic in the net. If they can maintain that rhythm, alternating, competing, reminiscent of Swayman and Ullmark. Not saying they can be that, Jennings winning duo, but 2 very good goalies is a luxury most teams don't have. And it's possible the Bruins could achieve that in this system. Now, Hampus Lindholm's health is a question mark from hope he's back soon. If he misses time, it'll test Boston's defensive depth. But the big picture is this is a team rediscovering itself. Right? The room feels connected. Young players like Minten are contributing. And for a group that finished last in the East last season, that's progress. That's all we're looking for right now is progress. Yeah, they gave up some goals last night against the Blackhawks, allowed them to hang around. But a 2-0 start is progress. It's early, small sample size. They've yet to play like, Washington was pretty good last year, but obviously Tampa on Monday is going to be a big test. For now, though, you can only work with what you're given on the schedule, and the Bruins are 2-0. Today's Bruin of the day, it's got to go to Fraser Minten. You can see why the Bruins wanted him in that trade with Toronto. You can see why Marco Sturm has inserted him into a key spot in the lineup. That overtime goal wasn't luck. It was playing the right way, perhaps a little deception by making it seem like he might pass it to Geeky, but he's strong in the walls. He's got a sick shot, not intimidated by the moment. And Minten is showing that the Bruins can indeed deploy youth without sacrificing structure. Next up for the Bruins is a game against the Buffalo Sabres, who are coming off a 4-0 shutout loss in their opener. Of course, they do have some weapons. Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, Josh Norris, who was injured in the opener for this team. Unfortunately, they lost him. They lost to the New York Rangers. They're going to be coming in pretty hungry to get that first win, although if they're missing Norris, that will be a big hit for them. It's really early to look at the stat comparison, but again, no goals for the Sabres. They allowed 4 goals to the Rangers. They struggle in the faceoff dot. Of course, they do have dangerous weapons in Thompson, Zach Benson, Alex Tuck, Rasmus Dahlin, Bowen Byram on the back end. It was Alex Lyon who made the start for them against the Rangers. This is the game the Bruins can and should win. It's an opportunity to build momentum. If the Bruins stick to their identity, win the dots, stay disciplined, own the net front, and dictate the play, they can bump the Sabres back down to the basement where they belong and build on this 2-0 start. Again, it hasn't been a perfect start for the Bruins, but it's been purposeful. And they have been rewarded for buying into Sturm's system so far. I had people say, it's too early to say his system works. They've only played Chicago. Washington was due to regress a bit. But they're playing a home game against the Sabres team that is possibly banged up, missing Josh Norris. It's a game they can and should win. And hopefully they're 3-0 heading into a big game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that was beating Ottawa pretty good last night and then allowed the Senators to come back and steal that game. All that to say, Saturday against Buffalo is the next test. Can they keep playing Bruins hockey when kind of the adrenaline fades from a couple big wins to begin the season? Encouraging signs so far. Starting to believe here that the Bruins could be a bit different, that they're going to defy expectations once again. Everybody thought they were going to remain where they were last season, forgetting that just a couple years ago, in a transition year, they exceeded those expectations. I'm believing what Marco Sturm is selling. I'm loving the play from the top line. Second line chipped in last night. The third line has the makings of something pretty special. Maybe you switch Eyssimont with Husnudinov to add a bit more speed and finish up there. Who knows? But some good options for the Bruins, and very excited about their start so far. All right, make sure you're following Locked NHL Bruins on X, Instagram, TikTok. Follow Ian C. McLaren on Blue Sky, Instagram as well. Subscribe to YouTube for post-game breakdowns and daily coverage. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to check out the Locked On NHL Game Night podcast as your second listen. The guys are recapping every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Local analysis on a national scale available on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every day. Thank you for tuning in today. Happy birthday, Dad. Excited to see you on Sunday. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.